All right, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Hopefully you guys had a lot of fun at the holiday party. I know a lot of you did.
I wish I could have.
Zoom people, can you guys hear us okay? We had some technical difficulties this morning. The computer wasn't working, TV wasn't working.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, now we finally got everything working again. Very last seconds. But today I wanted to bring everybody together and start the conversations about compensation, dialogue, how you're talking with sellers, you know, with these new changes that are coming up. And it's becoming relevant that now we're in this strange kind of transitioning time where we've got deals that are starting to come together now, and some are closing before the end of the year, and some are not. Some are closing into next year. So what does that look like as far as what different paperwork you're gonna have to have? What's the dialogue, you know, that you're having right now with your sellers? And so that's really wanted to make sure why we're you know, putting this together. I was cracking up because I don't think I've ever seen a more packed calendar for a December ever. Ever. Normally we're like, you know, we're definitely going light. Yeah, and I know a lot of people take time off during this time and stuff like that, but we don't have a choice. We really got to make sure that we're stepping into this and we're taking the time to learn everything and just being intentional, you know, right now, especially with our time and with the processes and the education that we really got to make sure we're on top of. Let me grab the calendar because I did want to touch on other stuff here real quick. So yes, today's class is not seller dialogue for competition. It is compensation. Yeah, McKenna didn't quite see my notes get clear enough, so she's like, "Oh, I thought it was you guys are competing." Well, we're always competing, but this is for a compensation dialogue. Tomorrow, Tony and I, all designated brokers, have to take a new Washington Realtors Train the Trainers clock hour class. Then on the 21st, that class, the portion for brokers, is going to be taught here live. It's not on Zoom, it's live only from 9 a.m. till noon.
What day was that again?
The 21st. It's not the most ideal timing, I know, because you're looking at basically the holiday break right after that. But I didn't want to wait and have everyone start trying to take the class in January when we really need to know all of this before the lot is changed over. So we're getting the very first class out of any of the John L. Scotts here first. It'll be live. So make sure you register for that. Also on Wednesday the 6th, we're going to go over the new 1A. It's got quite a bit of differences and changes in it. The boilerplate portion of the compensation section is pretty much the same. So we're going to use today's, you know, the 1A as far as looking at that. But if you want to learn exactly how to, you know, what's new in the form, you know, on the 6th, we're doing that. And then, and then the 19th and the 20th, I bought and paid for the last Rennie classes for unbeatable value propositions for buyer's agents. I thought that was pretty dang relevant for people to take into the new year. And it's a 2-day class. You'll get a workbook. So please register for that one so I know how many workbooks to put together. Otherwise, some people might show up and they're not going to get a workbook.
Is that in person only too?
I think I'll do this one on Zoom because I know I would much rather have that to where people are like, man, what was, you know, because I know a lot of times people like to rewatch stuff. So I probably will Zoom that one, but I can't give the book through the Zoom. So if you want the workbook to go, you know, with it, so try to show up on those dates too. again, I apologize, it's kind of like, can't really help but to, put a bunch of education into the end of the year. But I just want to make sure everybody's up and, ready to go for the new laws for things to start. Okay, I got one chat here. Oh, it's AI. To make sure we cover that. Any questions before we kind of kick things off and start looking at a few things? Anybody dealing with anything now or had any conversations or anything? I've already done a listing appointment. I have already done a listing appointment and talked about compensation. Tony has too. Has anyone else already started in and like, hey, I got to start, doing this dialogue now? Has anyone else had that opportunity yet? Zoom people, feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I have. I have to.
Okay, what did that look like? Just curious, like, how did it go? Was it hard for you to start the dialogue?
For me, it wasn't. My seller actually started the dialogue and said, I hear we don't have to offer any compensation to the buyer's agent. And so, and this is a client and who's become a friend. And so I said, no, you don't actually, but you're not going to have any buyers agents bringing their buyers to look at your property if that's the case. So if you choose to do that, and we just kind of talked through it that way. And she goes, oh, okay. And then went right back to the regular compensation, right?
Okay.
So I think,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go for it.
So you just have to be really, really careful because part of the lawsuit, this has been getting drilled in from Aaron and corporate and everybody else.
Andy Fitzsimmons is talking about this too a lot.
You just have to be really careful on saying you're not going to get anybody if you don't offer compensation. The
But
reason
I didn't say that.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, any sort of thing that kind of remotely even kind of infers that you should be giving compensation for promoting the listing is kind of like borderline, is kind of how I'm understanding it.
So
And
isn't that what we're learning here is kind of how to phrase things and to make sure that we don't get into trouble? Because it was a couple months ago that we had the big class. So that's why I'm here, making sure that, I'm doing everything right.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I will go ahead. I'll start things out just telling you how did my listing appointment go. So I brought this up, and this is the thing that you guys are gonna have to start doing, is you are gonna have to bring it up to the sellers. Don't wait for the news to start broadcasting and telling everyone, hey, guess what? You no longer have to pay buyers, brokers compensation at all. You don't have to pay it now. If you wait and you go ahead and you're like, here you go, I'm sending you the listing contract, it's all been assigned, ready to go, we're done, great, we're moving along. If there's no dialogue, that's where you're gonna have issues, because the news is going to be hitting this really, really hard. As soon as, in fact, it's already started coming out. There's articles already been hitting, obviously about the class action lawsuits. It's the class action lawsuits on the East Coast are starting to hit brokers now, agents. They're not just suing firms. Did you guys hear this? There's some that like big teams that they started going after. So it's going to come out, the conversation will come out. It's best if you hit it head on and you have your dialogue ready to go. So this is how I had my conversations with my sellers, and this is an estate sale. So I had a full family there, literally of like 7 people, and sat everybody down and I said, okay, I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to the news or to the lawsuits that are happening along the East Coast, there's some huge class action lawsuits. And then one of the sellers pipes up right away, said, oh, yeah, I heard that, yeah, that they're suing like big, the companies or something like that. So, and I'm like, okay, well, is there anything else, that you heard? And they're like, no, it's just, that's all I didn't quite understand what it was about.
Mhm.
So the reason why I wanted to make sure I started out with having the dialogue about, okay, there's lawsuits, there's class action lawsuits, there's things going on the East Coast, not here. Was just, I wanted to find out what is, what they know and what was their ideas. So I said, so I explained that these class action lawsuits are about antitrust amongst the realtors. The association, they basically in 1997, for our state agency law, prior to that year, was you automatically represented the seller, right? Your agency immediately was with the seller. If you didn't represent someone, you were always representing the seller. Well, after a while, they were like, wait a minute, that doesn't quite work. We need to make sure that buyers have protection and representation as well. So that's when they split things up and they said, hey, the buyer is bringing the money, they're buying the seller's house. From those funds, will disperse and they'll share the compensation to the buyer's broker. So now, come January 1st, this is no longer going to happen. It's going to be negotiated up front. So then it was the question started in. So that as soon as I kind of got to that part, they're like, so we don't have to pay a buyer broker's we don't have to pay their commission?
These
that
are
was
business
theirs.
in the States, right?
Yeah.
So they're all.
Yeah, so they all started like, so, we don't have to pay it all. And then one person was like, oh, wow, though, that's great. One person like already immediately started feeling like, okay, this is a good thing for us. But then the other a couple of those family members was like, wait a minute, Eric, why would we not pay that? We want to sell the house. That's what they said. They're like, why would we not pay buyer broker compensation when we want to sell? So I was like, okay, well, I go, let me first tell you what the rules are. The rules are because I said, I charge X. This is what I charge. And this is what I do. You can decide what compensation, if any, you want to provide to the buyer broker's firm, in which they share to the buyer broker. So they said, okay, so we can do that. I go, but let me tell you some of the rules are, yes, you don't have to offer anything, but let me tell you the new rules for the buyers. On the agreement for the buyer's agency agreement, because beginning January 1st, every single buyer who's going to have agency representation, that's the key thing, will have to have a buyer's, I keep forgetting the dang name of that form. Because it is, it's not even gonna be on the old one. I'd have to get to the new one. Hold on.
Representation in there.
Yes, it's equivalent to the buyer's agency agreement, but
Oh, they
it
changed
is,
the name of it?
yeah. It's the long mouthful. Let me get to legal bulletin 225. There it is. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, this is the newest one. Wrong one. Bear with me, you guys. 224. Get to the red lines. And we get to the. I know, sorry. There's so many.
Wow.
Hold up. And okay, that's after this.
It's a little too exciting.
Right?
I know, drum roll, please. Buyer brokerage services agreement.
Buyer brokerage.
Buyer brokerage services agreement. That is the new form. John L. Scott will have their own version. Aaron finished the last legal stuff in it. Marketing has it now, and they're putting the last touches on the graphic. You guys remember our old buyer's agency agreement that John L. Scott made? There's a lot of people that really prefer that one because it has a graphic and it explains your value proposition right on the face of the contract, which really helps with the dialogue with buyers. Okay, so after explaining that, you know, to the sellers that the buyers will have to sign off on buyer's brokerage services agreement in order to have agents, in order to work with a broker, that they can now decide not to even show properties that offer zero compensation. The buyers make the decision. So the buyer's saying, no way, interest rates are way too high, prices are way too high. I have to pay inspections and all my other closing fees. And now I have to pay my own buyer brokerage compensation? No way. I do not want to see houses. So now on the flip side, when you're having conversations with your buyers during your consultation, you need to, that is definitely part of the dialogue. Now, do you want me to show you even properties that are not paying compensation? So they can decide that. And secondly, VA buyers are prohibited from paying the compensation. And right now, according to Veterans Affairs, they are not going to update. They're not changing this yet. They're having the dialogue, but as far as right now, they have not changed it, and there's no word on if they will ever change that. They're going to still continue prohibiting anybody who's a VA buyer to have to pay their own compensation. So now you got two major reasons, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, on why should we offer a compensation. What do you guys think? So their dialogue to me was like, okay, well, this makes sense. I said the reason that we're changing the laws is to put all the transparency into the process and in the transaction as humanly possible, because this will absolutely do that. I see we got one chat. Got a question? No, it keeps showing the same thing. All right. So after that, what I did is we went through the CMA. I did the Unibind, and they were actually blown away from the Unibind, by the way. They're like, oh my, one of the sellers, they were like, you had this published for us? I go, no, I made that this morning. She's like, wow, she's like, I've sold 6 or 7 houses. I've never seen anything like this on the planet. This is amazing. So definitely try to get Unibinds. So after we went through the comps, I said, now I took the liberty to printing out every single comparable that's in the book to show you, and I highlighted what was the SOC, what was this current selling office compensation for every single one of the listings. And they said, wow, this is really helpful. You know, this kind of gives us a really good idea. And they ended up offering, and I'm just going to say it in dollar amounts because we're in a class, that they decided to go with $2,500 for the compensation. Okay, after showing them the averages, there were, so I printed out all of the ones and I highlighted them. I think there was two $2,000 selling office compensations, right, in the comparables. There were, I think it was like 12 2,500 for buyer's compensation. There was like 5 $3,000 compensation, and there were actually 2 $4,000 compensation in that area. So out of all of those, I let them decide, and they said, you know, the one person said, you know, if we have any issues selling, I would much rather, instead of lowering our price, I would rather up the selling office compensation. That's what one of the sellers said, and a couple other of the sellers were like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe let's don't worry about that until we're down the road with the listing. Let's not worry about that. But they actually decided to go with the average of what the comparables around them offered. That's what they decided. Now, if they decided, let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say they told me that, Eric, we don't want to offer anything. What? Because you guys are this is gonna start, it's going to happen. We will see more zeros. So that pretty much means we're asking that we find a very good buyer broker who's willing to come over, bring their buyer, because the buyer opted to allow to be shown properties that offer 0 compensation for the buyer brokerage. But we're gonna want them to negotiate, is what you're saying.
It doesn't see a searchable field, like, can you run a
Yeah.
report?
Yes.
So
That was
run a
updated in
report
2019.
So run a report on all the 0%
I've kept an eye on
SOCs,
it.
and like, look at your days on market or how many price drops they've had. I would probably approach it with that angle, like, hey, here's what
Mhm.
happens if you,
Yep.
in this neighborhood, here's what happens if you're offering 0.
Yeah, good way to put it is, here are some properties that did have 0. Here's how long they've been on the market. Back away from it,
The data speak
it's
for
kind of
itself.
like, let the information speak for itself. I don't want you guys getting into an issue of making a statement or having dialogue that's going to put you into the same realm as the antitrust lawsuits, because that's what some people were doing.
Everybody else is doing that, you should too. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So Eric, you
Mhm.
can say, if you'd like to offer 0 compensation, are you willing to allow an agent to bring their buyer over and negotiate with you if they choose to buy your home, negotiate that compensation? So you
Yeah,
can
Darcy.
say that, correct?
Absolutely. And
Perfect.
it's at that point, personally, I would decide if I even want to take that listing on. That's my decision, my own personal, because when it comes to me spending money to market, I feel like I'm going to be wasting my marketing dollars. Because we all know that the very first 2.5 weeks of the listing is always the highest activity for the listing itself.
So why are we not tying this into market ready day one conversations?
Market ready?
Because that's part of the whole package, is having a fair commission, or, well, I guess we can't say that, but a commission that's going to promote it the best to agents and their buyers, or brokers and their buyers.
You have to be really careful with the dialogue and the conversation about, will this, if you don't offer something, we're not gonna get anything.
That's not
Because-
necessarily true,
Correct.
because you got negotiations. I mean, if we're offering 0 as a listing agent, the buyer's agent, if they know what they're doing, is gonna ask
Yeah.
for us to provide some sort of compensation in order to fulfill their, what was that, buyer brokerage services agreement.
Good job. Yep.
But
So like, what in actuality do you think is gonna happen? Are buyer brokers really gonna see a zero on there and not show that property at all? Or are they gonna counsel their buyers and say, hey, they're offering zero, however, reminder, this is our agreement.
Yep.
But what we can do is there's a box on the purchase and sale agreement where we can request that they,
The 41C will be able to let you request compensation being paid.
so do you think that people are gonna just not show?
Well, there's going to be some, I mean, for sure, because now in the brand new buyer brokerage services agreement, there's the complete new option, which was against the Realtors Association rules and against Northwest MLS rules before. I mean, it used to be that you can't pay, you had to charge $1, before. And then they changed in 2019 to be zero. Our MLS is actually light years ahead of compared to anywhere across the nation. All of those other states and the Realtors Association are all looking to us because they're like, okay, I see why you guys did this. Because other places are like, why are you guys publishing the SOC? They started doing that in 2019. You guys know how long the statute of limitations are for antitrust? 4.
So we're almost through.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric,
Yes.
I have a question. It just doesn't, I mean, I get all the new laws and everything. It just doesn't, it seems like these are somewhat of conversations I'd already been having because they post it on the MLS. So, okay, I just want to make sure I'm like, I know that now they can offer zero and they can ask the seller to pay compensation based, in the listing agreement. So there's a little bit of difference, but I just wanted to make sure these are the conversations I kind of was already having. So, okay.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. We've been hearing this for the people who've been really good about getting buyer's agency agreements already before this new law that's coming. They've already started those dialogues, so they're much more comfortable now with this whole new process because they're like, well, I'm doing the same thing. Because I'm telling my buyers when I get an agreement signed with them that, hey, this is what I charge for my buyer brokerage services to you. So I'm going to do, this, and this. I'm going to negotiate for you. I'm going to get that seller to pay my compensation. That's part of the dialogue you have to explain to your sellers too, is that some buyer brokers might try to be competitive out there and then might say, I represent buyers for X, whatever. They might be saying that. And if that's what they're going to do, right, they have to decide what's going to happen with remaining funds. They're going to have to there's going to have to be the 41C we're going to see more 41Cs in our contracts more than ever. So I'll pull up and look. Why did that open? Let me share my screen. Got a couple things to look at today. So here's the 41. 41. Oh. Oh, it's still the same. Then there's the termination.
Well, he's looking for that, so I was on a corporate meeting this morning. And our numbers are starting to reflect as John L. Scott agents. We're doing some comparisons to Coldwell Banker, Bain and some other brokerages. Our numbers are starting to go, especially, and for us personally, the last 5 months we've seen growth. Is because I think our agents at John L. Scott are getting so prepared and we've been ahead of the curve. We went back to, some companies are starting to talk about, let's go back to basics, where we did it, 6-7 months ago, way before the curve even started. So you're starting to see a big reflection on the numbers now. on how we're doing. And I think because we're getting so far ahead of it on how to explain this on both sides, that you guys are gonna have a huge competitive advantage when you go in for your listing appointments and your buyer broker compensation appointments, or your buyer
Brokerage services agreement.
agreement, that you guys are gonna have such a massive competitive edge, because you guys are gonna be fully trained on how to explain these things thoroughly. And it's already reflecting on the numbers, so we were, like I said, during our corporate meeting this morning, they emphasized that and how it's already starting to reflect. And
Can you hear me?
Yes,
So why wouldn't you just bring these couple of documents to a listing presentation so you can explain them what the contracts actually look like and how they read, and give them to a seller so they can see it?
yeah, no, that's a good plan. I didn't wanna take red lines to the sellers I mean, they're confusing as heck anyway, right now, until it's a clear contract, and which we won't get those until right before the first.
Yeah,
was-
no, I'm talking about the actual contracts, not the red line stuff, like bringing and showing, hey, this is what it looks like on the other end. So
Mhm.
it's up to you how you want to take care of this, but this is what this could look like once we get the property listed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a good idea to let them see what a buyer can agree to.
But that's where I like what you did, where you printed out what other homes around them and what they were offering
Mhm.
the other side.
Yeah.
I would wanna be careful with bringing any additional, this is just me.
Yeah.
Any additional forms, because they're gonna be confused already with the listing agreement and all the other forms they already have to fill out. That to bring another contract to them on what the buyer's doing may be somewhat, to me, may be somewhat confusing, but bringing in, this is what other homes in your area sold for, and this is what was offered, what would you like to do?
Mhm.
So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's
There's
good.
no wrong or right way, but
Yeah,
I
as,
don't wanna
as
be
long as
careful.
you're getting the point across on the kind of the main things, is that the rules are, they don't have to offer anything. But on the flip side, the rules are to buyers now that if they do have to pay their own compensation, they can decide to skip listings that are not offering anything. They can make that decision right from the beginning, and then people will skip your house.
That form also, does it indicate, if I'm remembering right, it indicates like a range of compensation amounts that they're willing to
Is it a
include or
range now?
exclude? Or there's some way to do like a minimum,
It didn't
Am I
used to be a
remembering that right?
range.
No,
Is it
there's
now?
no range,
Is it
there's a
just
set
zero?
amount.
Set amount, that's what I
or
thought.
above zero, is that it?
It used to be a set amount that the
Let's get to
agent,
it.
whatever the agent wanted to.
There we
Compensated.
go. Alright, let's look.
Compensation, here we go.
There we go. So it's a percent or a dollar amount or other. Donald Scott is not gonna take jewels, IOUs, farm animals. The other just cracks me up. I did get a really good question. Can someone pay payments for their compensation?
Mm.
I threw that over to I was like, I'm saying no, because how are we gonna manage that? How are you gonna stay on top of that?
You get another contract to negotiate.
You will pay, yeah, $1,000 a month.
For 30 years.
Yeah, that's a good sale. Okay, yeah. You have a question, Tony?
yeah, well, no, for tomorrow, maybe we'll find out. But it'll be interesting if the seller says 0% or $0. And then, but they can negotiate. I wonder if they're gonna have a checkbox for
Negotiable.
negotiable.
Negotiable for.
So
say
you
that
offer
part again.
zero.
You offer zero.
But you're willing to look at an offer with compensation for the buyer.
I mean, anybody who's selling, the rules are, you have to present all offers. Regardless. So I don't think they'll have to, they won't have to print anything or put anything together, because
you're
that's
having to
your,
present their offer.
that's your statutory duties to present all offers. So that's,
The
A given.
competition is going to be fun to get these if you do. Because some are gonna say zero compensation. But you have to present all offers. So you can set your
Right,
offer.
but if you have but if-
Offer with you can offer and then add compensation
Yep.
from the seller.
Yeah.
So,
Because I had a few last year, was before this happened, where the seller was offering less compensation than what I have for my clients. And so I did, I think it was the 41C.
Yeah.
I attached that to show, and the sellers agreed to it. It may not happen all the time, but it still goes back to, you offered two, I need at least this. Are you willing to pay that? But you have to do it up front when you submit your offer. It can't be like you submitted your offer, they agreed to it, it's, oh, by the way.
yeah.
no, it has to be at the same
At
time.
the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that case, let's say that there is a seller that has zero compensation for buyer brokerage, services agreement. Or they're saying they're not gonna pay buyer brokerage firm anything. Your buyer has agreed with you on the buyer brokerage services agreement to pay you X. Okay? They did not want to filter zero SOC properties. So you're bringing everything to them.
Mhm.
They find a house that they love. You go show it. You go write it. I would say you will start conversations up front to the listing broker. Say, hey, I have a buyer brokerage services agreement with my buyer. I'm going to be asking for the buyer brokerage the compensation to be paid by your seller. Here's a heads up.
That's
Let
all.
you know it's coming. You're going to write it up like normal on the front page of the Form 21 or 28 or 25, whatever purchase sale agreement you're using. Whatever's in the MLS that's published, that's the amount you're writing on the front page. Don't think that you can just put the compensation on the front page. That is not correct. Because that is clearly written to show that the sellers, whatever they offered in the listing is on the front page. If they have zero, you're going to put zero. But then you have to mark the box, see attached, see addendum, right? So you're gonna have to look at, here, let's look at the 21.
Yeah, because I thought it was different.
Okay, jump to it. So right here, buyer brokerage firm compensation, zero. See how it says paid as offered? Say you're gonna put other. Because they have zero.
No. Buyer brokerage, not listing brokerage. Buyer brokerage firm compensation is,
Let me jump to the red line. Hold on. Let's jump to the manual. We gotta jump to the manual.
I'm sorry.
Let's go 21.
That's why we're having.
Let's have a conversation.
That's why we're having this.
21.
Let's have a conversation.
Let's jump down to, gotta look at the number.
17, it was.
Well, yeah, but they're numbered different on the red lines. So let's get
25?
to
25.
25. Okay, insert the buyer brokerage firm compensation offered by the seller in the listing,
Okay,
including selecting whether the offered compensation is a flat dollar amount or a percentage of the sale percent.
Okay.
The buyer and buyer's broker then need to decide if the compensation in the listing will be accepted as offered in the listing, pay as offered, or if the compensation will be modified by the parties in an addendum. The parties can use the buyer brokerage firm compensation addendum form 41C or similar form to modify the compensation. Consistent with specific term number 17, MLS Rule 101A1 provides the buyer brokerage firm's compensation shall be paid as published in the listing if accepted by the buyer on behalf of the buyer brokerage firm in the purchase and sale agreement, or 2 is modified by the buyer brokerage firm, and the seller in the purchase and sale agreement. Note that revised general term U provides the buyer brokerage firm's compensation offered in the listing shall be paid by seller as set forth in the agreement or any addendum hereto. If there's any inconsistency between the buyer brokerage firm compensation offered in the listing and the description of the compensation stated in specific term number 17, the terms of the listing shall supersede and control. This means that if a mistake is made when inserting the compensation into specific term number 17, no changes made to the compensation and addendum, the compensation offered in the listing will control. So in the event there's conflicting terms that that's in the list or that's in the agreement, the listing is going to control. Only in the event that if you didn't have a 41C at all, you mark, let's say the SOC in the listing was $2,000. You wrote, oh, I want $3,000 on that line, but there's no 41C amending what the seller is going to agree to pay. That seller will still pay $2,000 because they did not agree to it in writing, just because it's written in on that front page. So that's why also at the same time, it makes sense that whatever's in the listing, you're going to write on that front page. It's not the amount you're changing it to. If you have the 41C, I guess it's one of those things where it's like probably not as important, but yet 41C will control in that event. Any questions about that? I want to share with you guys something cool. And please keep in mind, this is one broker's way of doing things. And this is a class, so normally we do not say percentages, but this is one person's way of doing it. I am not saying this is how you should do it. I'm giving you an example,
We
okay?
get it here.
All right.
I promise not to sue you.
Thank you. Everyone heard that. I got a lot of witnesses today. All right, so Stacy Watley was nice enough to share what she does. She has her own little mini listing presentation, and she shows how she divides up her idea about how to work with compensation with a seller. I thought it was relevant to the conversations because this is what we're doing. Oh, let's see if this thing's gonna work. No? Yeah, I guess I'll have to scroll it. So anyways, she's got her own little welcome package, her story, her team. She's an office leader, compensation. So she's updated some things. Things have changed since you last sold or purchased a home. Compensation is now disclosed and negotiated differently. I pride myself on always being upfront and transparent about the entire real estate process, including my compensation. At any time, please stop and ask me questions if you don't understand. It's welcome and expected. I thought that was a great entry and dialogue about what's going on in today's world. So her marketing options. She offers an essential, classic, and premium.
That's smart.
She's given me permission to share this. I will be able to send this out if this is something you want. And if you want McKenna to customize your own little packet, she's willing to take orders. You are my first priority when it comes to selling your home. I don't just have a cookie cutter marketing plan in place for everyone. I listen to your needs and wants, and together we decide on the perfect action plan. You'll be happy to know that you also have choices when it comes to the amount of marketing that you desire. I've come up with a new approach to make sure that you have a say in your marketing plan. So her essential is 2.5%, her classic is 3%, and her premium is 3.5%. So 2.5% in the essential, she includes her professional photos, 40 photos, HDR photos, a slideshow, listing syndication, social media, public open house, broker's open house, blog posts, and flyers. 3% classic, she has photos and virtual staging, HD video tour, listing syndication, social media, public open house, broker's open house, blog.
Hey,
posts.
Eric, in the last slide, some of the stuff said not included, just a heads up.
Oh, it did.
Like, look at flyers.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Oh,
Flyers.
Says better.
okay, you're right. Thank you. So not included. Yeah. I wonder why I put those on there then.
So I think it's because she's showing that it's limited. So like on open houses, there's only one. But then
Yeah.
on this one, it's probably more. So things like that. Social
Yep.
media, it was like one.
Paid promotion. Yep. Oh yeah, paper, full color flyers will be provided for the signpost, open house, 100 just listed postcards we've sent out to your neighbors. Yeah, you're right. Thank you so much for catching that. Listing
I probably would
syndication.
highlight that though.
Yeah.
That was a good catch.
Mhm.
Be good to have like a-
Staging is to enhance or show how a space is to be used. It's not always necessary with every home. So she's got definitely some differences in here. In the premium, she's got premium includes full stage or premium virtual stage, whichever's necessary to best showcase your home. 4K HD video, so she'll get a professional video shot. Brokers open, you got premium paid promotion and internet social media. So she's doing, more boost. She's doing 300 closest neighbors, just listed postcards, blog post, listing syndication, premium programs, social media with premium paid ads. Definitely putting in more, she's putting a lot more into it for sure. If you're offering staging, you guys already know costs for that are definitely higher. So that's what she's choosing to do. So she does listing launch, cloud CMA, instant purchase plus, market ready plus, access home closing, property tracker, things that she offers. Goes into different information and shows off her partners. So that's her mini little portion about what she's using for dialogue. What do you guys think? Has anybody done anything similar?
Considered it a few times, but never pulled the trigger on that,
Oh.
different levels of options. Our branding is excellent community, or excellent client experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want to have a reputation affiliated with that lesser service.
Yeah.
So it's that balance of, are we willing to have that lesser service that we're comfortable with?
But I think you give excellent service at each level. It all depends on how you
Sure.
think about it
And it depends on the needs of the seller
and the
too.
needs of the seller. If it's a condo, they may not want,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all that
so
stuff.
We wrestle with.
it's it's funny because Stacy said the same thing. I'm gonna share this for you guys in the chat. Stacy said that she actually, here, let me stop share on that one. When people ask, like, okay, so what if we want less than this? We only want to pay X. She's like, well, that's what I charge. The reason I won't do that is because I'd have to take away other items, and that takes away from my brand. So I just won't do that. I'm sorry. I'm not the right listing broker for you then, if you're looking for just to put your house on the MLS. Here's a bunch of companies that'll do it for $500. but you get what you pay for. So she said she has no problem with that. She said like in all the years, she's like maybe had one client ever deviate from her plan, and almost everyone's like, oh no, I want, it's either middle of the road or higher. Like we want staging. Okay, then
And she didn't say staging, it said virtual staging.
full staging or virtual, depending
Or
on
like
needs.
premium.
Yep,
And then
premium.
premium had staging.
Yes.
So Eric, back to the front page of the purchase and sale agreement. So as a listing broker, and somebody writes in that they don't put in what's, they don't add the 41 and they don't put what the seller is offering. They just put what they want. Cause I just had this happen. You know, and the sad part is that my seller was offering 2.5%, and then they asked for however many thousands of dollars more. But there was no 41, so just expect that to happen because we have some bad agents.
Yeah, that is absolutely a way to not get paid. I'm just telling you right now, if you're representing a buyer, you have a buyer brokerage service agreement with that buyer. They're agreeing to pay you an amount. And if the amount that is offered by a seller is less than an amount, you have to get it in writing that they are agreeing to paying that. Because that, we just read the manual to that box, didn't we? It didn't say, put the dollar amount in here of whatever you want to get paid, did it? It says, this is the amount that is published in the listing. If you want different, you have to mark either one of the boxes. Now, Tony's been reviewing deals, I've reviewed deals. Kieko is finally back and reviewing deals for us, started on the 1st. Thank God. We're so happy you're back, Kieko. But we've seen all sorts of crazy things. We've seen they write in the amount they want. You know, we looked at what's in the listing, it's different. And then they say, see attached, that's other. And then they wrote in the 22D page 2 other, and they said, SOC is X, right? So they wrote that, the sellers sign it, they're gonna pay it, they wanna sell, but that's not proper, right? It's really not. I know that escrow has had some deals where the sellers has pushed back. So they had a seller that came through and said, hey, I know the front page says this, but my listing agreement says I would pay this. So escrow is like, hey, we got an inaccuracy, you know, on the purchase and sale agreement. They didn't agree in writing to raise it. There's no language saying they're gonna raise what they paid. The seller's only paying this. And that controls, just like the manual said. So it has happened. Yeah, it's going to be rare. Most sellers, like, they wanna sell, they wanna get things done. But anybody who can read can understand that if there's a difference, that that listing agreement's gonna control. And that's why it's very important to make sure your listing agreements are ironclad, tight, and you're writing them correctly. Now, I've had some conversations over this past weekend, and these are the things that are starting to come out. Is we had a deal, someone wrote, they represent a buyer right now. They do not have a buyer's agency agreement right now, and the deal closes on January 7th or 8th. What has to happen? They're gonna have to get agreed. They have to have one. They have to have one. We have to have one for the file, or you cannot get paid.
Okay, so with that being said, do we need to submit that form to escrow and title, or just to our Sky Slope?
It's got to be in our Sky Slope.
Okay.
Yeah, the company commission department already is prepped and knowing the law, we cannot show that we paid a broker without it.
So then the money comes into John L. Scott and it sits there until that is done, okay.
Yep. We would have to, in the event that that situation happens, we'll have to hold on to that money until you get it. So can you imagine being in that situation? There's nothing wrong with getting it signed now. Okay? Agency will carry through. Now, we're already having situations also where dual agency is happening. Limited dual agency is going to begin January 1st. So that's definitely different than the way things have been. The state has been talking about this for forever, about the facts that, you know, dual agency, that you really can't represent both parties exactly the same. How would you go to a home inspection if you're representing the seller and the buyer? Are you gonna go in there like this? Right? You can't, like, how are you gonna, and they're like, oh man, there's mold in here. Oh boy, they start talking about all this situation. And you're not supposed to tell you can't do anything to harm the seller, can't do anything to harm the buyer. So, I mean, from the beginning, it's a good thing that they're actually changing the laws to move towards limited dual agency. Another scenario happened already over this weekend. One of our listing brokers had a buyer call about their listing and say, wow, we really want to see this. Are you gonna have an open house soon? Oh, no, I won't, but I'm gonna go ahead and, I could show it. They came, they loved it. We want you to write it up and we want you to represent us. So then our broker was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be one of those things. If I do dual agency now, and is that gonna carry through? Like, it comes up, all these questions start like snowballing. Like, what are we gonna do? How am I gonna do this? So we came up with the idea of, what about unrepresented buyer? How about, because they wanted to save on some money, they wanted to come in lower, right? They said, hey, we know that that there's gonna be a buyer compensation if you represented us, and we would like to somehow use some of that to negotiate some pricing, right? The seller was like, okay, I'm okay with that, but at the same time, it's like, wow, you already represent us. There's issues there. So we said, if we have unrepresented buyer and we include a 22RA, who knows what a 22RA is? Raise your hand. Anybody know what a 22RA form is?
Is that the attorney review?
Yes.
What did she say?
Attorney review contingency. I would absolutely start using that form in some of these types of scenarios where you're putting a deal together. Client's gonna have no representation. You can use that you can use that in a case of an unrepresented buyer. That's way more protection. Give them a 5-day attorney review contingency. If they don't go and actually go meet with an attorney to review the paperwork, that's on them. Can you imagine, like, hey, we want to sue this broker because they screwed us over, and they take an attorney, and the attorney's like reviewing it and like, okay, they're like, oh, well, what attorney did you take this to go review this? And they're like, oh, we didn't do it. Okay. That's not going to be good. So the 22RA is really good form to include in certain situations where you want more protection in the transaction, to put another shield in front of you and the firm.
I have a question.
Yes.
When we're doing our net proceeds with the seller, should we bring a couple different versions, or how should we present that to the seller? Are we adding the buyer? Are we assuming that there's gonna be a paid buyer compensation where we're running the numbers, or how should we do that?
I would not run those until you and the seller have figured out what compensation is going to be.
So don't even bring one, just do it with
Don't
that.
do it. Yeah, say, I would just have the dialogue with the seller and have conversation, you know, that, hey, once we decide on what compensation will be, I'm going to give you net proceeds. Yeah, that's a good point, Vanessa, that really, that a lot of times people were doing that in the beginning. Until you know, you can't really do that.
If you have multiple offers, like if you're at that stage.
Yeah.
You can do several net sheets and
Yep.
receipt sheets and
Yeah, that's a
compare.
good point. Good point to say that, hey, seller, upon receiving offers, I will do a new net proceeds based on the offer, so you can get a good idea what your net proceeds will be, if you were to accept one of those. Okay, so back to the unrepresented buyer. First and foremost, when does that get decided on how much that unrepresented buyers, how much listing office compensation, when does that happen?
It's on the listing agreement.
It's already on your 1A. So you better be really, really careful to make sure you're filling in the 1A properly, because if you put 0 in that, you're not getting anything else. It would just be your LOC. So there would be no funds to help negotiate and bringing price. I mean, you wouldn't be able to contribute towards closing costs and other things. And don't forget that you would have to, if you're going to be contributing funds in any way, that's gonna go also on that 41C. So if some of the money's going to the buyer for part of their down payment or towards closing costs or their rate buy down or anything like that, you have to use that form to adjust it there. But that is already predetermined. So good thing our listing broker actually had their amount that they wanted for an unrepresented buyer so that they could still negotiate the pricing down. So come January 1st, we're okay in this situation because an unrepresented buyer has no agency at all. They're still unrepresented even after the 1st. So be prepared that some of these things might start coming at us. And you know, and that's kind of the way to handle that one. Dual agency though will become limited dual agents once you're past January 1st, if you sign something else different. Erin gave me some response to some questions I sent to her from the weekend. So what happens with dual agency in 2023? Deal closes in 2024. She said, my position on this is that if the broker is continuing to provide brokerage services, written agreements that comply with the statute should be in place. I'm hoping that we can get an addendum together that brokers can easily use in this situation. So she's talking with the MLS, she's looking at other things like, that was something, she's like, wow, that's actually a really good question. I haven't heard anybody actually say this yet. Like dual agency 2023, dual agency 2024, what converts it to the new limited dual agency? It doesn't, there's nothing that automatically does that. So stay tuned for more to come on that one. Also, what about an unrepresented buyer in 2023? And she said nothing will need to be done. Pending transactions with unrepresented buyers stay the same. And lastly, deals closing 2024. Will buyer's agency agreement be needed in our SkySoap file in listings? So if you're a listing broker, do we need to collect that? She said, no, we will not need to do that. She does not see that being a requirement. So a lot of people had that question. Yvonne, before you wrap things up.
I was going back to limited representation for 2024. Don't we still have the same conflict with their unrepresented? They have to have something reviewed by the attorney, but they still need a home inspection. And you're the one having to open the door, be there. So wouldn't you have the same conflict?
Yeah, yes, the conflict's that will still be the same. Limited dual agency really pulls in and clarifies the fact that Levin has the listing, Karen has the buyer. You're both under the same firm. To now on the buyer side for representation. Do you see how before sellers were agreeing to it? Sellers were agreeing to limited dual agency in our listing agreements previously under the same realm. Karen has the listing, Levin's bringing the buyer. Old 2023 listing agreements, limited dual agency because of the same firm. Now, post 2024, you have a buyer's agency agreement. The listing's coming from the same firm. The language was not the same in our buyer's agency agreements, so that portion had to be updated.
I'm confused.
We'll get through this.
Make it happen.
I'm confused. So dual agency with the company. So,
Limited dual agency.
okay, limited dual agency.
Mhm.
You have your listing agent and your buyer's agent under the same umbrella,
Yep,
the
same
company.
firm.
So where's the conflict there?
There's no conflict, but it wasn't stated the same in our old buyer's agency agreements.
Okay.
Talks about it on the 1A. for
Exactly.
listing.
The seller's got the knowledge,
Mhm.
oh, I'm agreeing to a limited dual agency because of the same firm, a lot of times,
Okay.
right? That's gonna happen. Well, now it's the other way around. Every buyer's gotta have an agency agreement.
Yes.
Now you got limited dual agency to the buyer side too.
Okay.
Mostly you're going to be handling limited dual agency in the same way that you are now. And having the same cautions, same way for like going to the home inspection, those issues are still exactly the same.
Okay.
Hopefully that clears things up. All right, you guys, that is class for today. Thank you for making it. We will continue this journey together as the world turns. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
Bye, guys.
you.